Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to Fannin's Flashbacks, the podcast that nobody asked for, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. This podcast is going to cover tales from IWA Mid South during my 12 years with the company, and it will be a part of the BNMVS Podcast Network. This podcast is intended for mature audiences only due to the foul language and graphic details about deathmatch wrestling that it will contain. This will be your backstage pass to get a peek behind the curtain at what led to the downfall of the craziest independent wrestling promotion of the late 1990s, early 2000s. And without any further ado, Nick Manawa, hit the music. Greetings, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 31 of Fannin's Flashbacks. It's the podcast nobody asked for, but I decided to give it to you anyway. These are tales from IWA Mid South during my time there from 1997 to 2009. But today we will also have some current information as well. I am joined today by one of the craziest and toughest deathmatch wrestlers that ever competed in IWA Mid South. He was in the 2005 and 2006 King of the Deathmatch tournaments, and also in one of the craziest stipulations that I ever saw on an IWA Mid-South show. He wrestles as Brandon Prophet. We know him better, a little better now, as John. So we're going to be joined by Brandon Prophet. John, how are you doing tonight?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's great to have you on here. It's been great to catch up with you since I joined the WrestleArts team, and been looking forward to this one. You got some great stories to tell.
Yeah, it's exciting. I don't do a whole lot of podcasts, so pardon the awkwardness in advance. Like, I'll get over it as we continue on, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's we'll just try to have some back and forth here, and I have enough of those awkward moments myself. The small talk, chit chat is not something that I'm absolutely good at, so we'll tough it out and see how it goes. Generally I start off the podcast just real simple, trying to get to know what got the guest to become a wrestling fan. So, John, when you're growing up, are you a young wrestling fan? Did you get into it later in life? How did it catch your attention at first?
Well, I'm from Houston originally. That's where I was born. So, Houston wrestling was a big thing. World class was a big thing down there. And I remember my mom's boyfriend, my brother's dad at the time, he got arrested for pelting Michael PSAs with a beer in the Freebird days. So
was this at the Sportatorium, or was it in Houston?
It was in Houston, yeah.
Okay.
So that kind of drew me into it.
Okay, and that was that Paul Bosch? Is that the name of the guy that ran down there in Houston?
Yeah, that would have been a Paul Bosch show when he was booking the World Class office.
Okay, and that's where that preacher runs now, right? The Joel Osteen or whatever took over, bought the building that was running, and so now it's a church, I believe.
Yeah, it's like a super church. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know I just went to Houston a couple years ago. Me and my friend Rich Wayne, we try to go to baseball games every year, try to hit a new stadium each year. We weren't able to do it last year, not able to do it this year. But we're down to where we've only got about 4 or 5 stadiums left to go. So we're waiting for, some of the teams we still got are in the queue to build a new stadium. So we haven't gone, but a couple years ago we did Texas and Houston for our games. So I went down to Houston, and my father-in-law watches that Joel Osteen. So since I'm a wrestling guy and the guys that had wrestled in Texas when I was growing up, I was like, I need to go see this. I'll take a picture of it for, my father-in-law. He might get a kick out of it just because he's, that part of it. And so took forever to get there. Traffic was horrible. And then there was construction. We get over there. I snap photos. I take it and send it to the father-in-law. And he's like, what's that? And I'm like, you don't even know the name of the dudes. You watch him every week and have to tell me his stupid joke that he tells in his sermon every week. And you don't even, I was like, oh, I'm glad I came over this way. But it was neat to go and see and know that that was a historical place. If I'd have had the time when we were in Dallas for the Texas Rangers, I would have tried to go to the location where the sportatorium was.
That'd be
Um,
cool, yeah.
so you're growing up in Houston, that's a Fannin territory down there. There's Fannin counties in between Dallas and Houston, and there's Fannin Street in Houston. I had to take a couple of pictures there on Fannin Street. Did you hang out on Fannin Street at all when you were growing up?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know much about Fannin Street. I'm gonna be.
No.
No, I lived in like the Sharpstown area,
Okay.
which probably doesn't mean a whole lot to very many people, but that's where I'm from. I was born at Sharpstown General. But we moved back to Indy when I was fairly young because this is where my mom and my dad are from. So we moved back to Indy, and of course, I got into Hulk Hogan and all that stuff like every other kid of the '80s. You know what I mean?
Okay. So how long though were you in Texas? Just a few years, you said?
We were kind of off and on. We moved back and forth a few times. The last time I lived in Houston was in the eighth grade, and I moved to Indianapolis when I was 14.
Okay.
And then for the most part, except for another excursion to Houston and to Florida, I've been in Indiana ever since.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did was world class still a thing when you were in Texas, or had that
Oh
was
yeah,
that
the world class.
died out?
No, they were still going. I think that they were kind of like reaching the tail end of their popularity. You know what I mean? But because I was born in '82, so that was probably during the prime run of the Von Erichs and all that stuff and
Right.
Pretty Birds, and then but as I got old enough to kind of remember anything, I was kind of it should have been at the tail end of all that.
Yeah, I think. Well, I was able to watch syndication was up here in Chicago. Um, during the Freebirds Von Erichs run, so I got to see a lot of that just on the syndicated show that would run. Except for some reason, the syndicated channel up here put it on at the same time as the you know Superstation TBS Saturday night show. So I'd have to run back and forth between. I had a 13-inch black and white TV in the bedroom that would have world class on it, while my dad would be out in the living room with the Crockett's and Georgia, or whatever happened to be on TBS at that point, because he liked that one better. So I'd run out there and watch it, and then depending on which was if there was a commercial, I'd go to the other TV. If they were on at the same time, I'd decide who I liked better that was on the TV and watch that at that point. And then we got a satellite dish in 1989, and we ended up getting the KTVT on the satellite. So then I could watch the world class show. It was like 10 o'clock at night on Saturday, I think, is when they aired it at that point. And that was towards the tail end, right before like USWA and Memphis had pretty much taken it over, and
Yeah.
it was definitely winding down at that point. It was still worth watching. We still enjoyed it when we would watch it together, but it definitely was on the downward swing. And I
Right.
think even Kevin Von Erich had pretty much stopped working at that point, and so it was a whole different crop of folks at that point. So yeah, you probably definitely was at the tail end of what was going on with it. Was
Yeah.
there was there local feds on TV in Indiana when you had moved up there?
So I didn't catch a whole lot of that like as a kid. I watched a lot of like NWA and stuff because coming from Texas, of course, like I was accustomed to the NWA champion and Ric Flair and all that, and then
Right.
which of course segues into the Four Horsemen and Crockett and all that. So I watched a lot of that. Like Arn Anderson has legitimately always been my favorite wrestler, even when I was a little kid. Like, I mean, of course, I went through the Hulk Hogan is my favorite wrestler phase, but once I discovered Arn Anderson, probably about like age 10, 9, 10, or something like that, there's something about Arn Anderson. He was just my favorite. Um, and there was like later when I was in high school, uh there when I moved back here there were some local promotions, but I started working wrestling shows pretty young, so I was 14 when I worked my first wrestling show. um so yeah, this will be I'm gaining on 30 years in the business.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much at the same place. I was a little bit older. My first my first night being doing anything with the IWA show was the night before my 21st birthday, and that was in night. I'm coming up on 29 years because that was in 97 November of 97 was the first Lexington IWA show. So yeah, we're definitely long in the tooth.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Um, so you said you got started when you were 14. How did that happen?
So I met a local wrestling promoter. I just turned 14. His name was Judas. He wrestled as Kamala Jr. Uh,
I've heard stories of Kamala Jr. Okay.
yeah, yeah, he gave me a flyer at a gas station, and he tried to convince me that he was Kamala. Which was, I was like, "That's funny, man," because he looked a lot bigger on TV. But uh, he so he gave me a flyer, and at the bottom of the flyer, he had a little hotline number. So I used to just like I didn't know any better. I was just a little kid, so I was like calling the hotline every day, like cutting promos on the little messages and stuff. Like see, I could be a wrestler. Like watch, like look at me cut these promos and all this stuff. So I'd cut these promos, and one day he called me back and he's like, "Do you think you could do that in front of people?" And I was like, "Yes, absolutely." And I thought I was like gonna be like the coolest dude ever. Like I was gonna be like Stone Cold 2.0 or something, right?
Yeah.
And everybody hated me. They just hated me. Like the whole crowd wanted to kill me. Like, and I talked to him. I was like, I'm sorry, I messed up. Like, and he was like, no, that's what I wanted. Like, that's what I thought would happen, and that's what I wanted. So here I was thinking I was gonna be like the hero and stuff, and everybody just hated me so bad. It was rough.
Were they just hating you because you were like shit talking as a little kid, basically, and
Oh yeah, I was
or
obnoxious as possible. Like
okay.
no grown up wants to hear some little kid
Right?
like running his mouth nonstop. You know what I mean? And I had a beard because I've had a beard since eighth grade, but I still look like a little kid with a beard. Like so, um, I just probably just made a fool of myself. But you know, I didn't know any better, and it got my foot in the door, and it got me a lot of heat locally for sure. Like with a lot of the guys locally, I had a ton of heat, which just made me more of a jerk because I didn't understand why they had like heat with me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't understand the etiquette of pro wrestling. Um,
Right.
because,
I couldn't believe when I got involved. I'm at the University of Kentucky. I'm studying political science, and I'm volunteering on political campaigns and trying to help out. And like, I hated it, absolutely hated it, couldn't stand it. And everybody was just such a jerk, and they would treat us like we were just treated like servants, and they're like, oh, you're just the college kids, these people are paying, $2,500 or $1,000, $500, whatever it was to be there. And they're like, they're going to get treated like kings and queens. And then you're here as free labor, keep away from everybody, don't do anything. And I absolutely hated it. And I was like, I can't stand politics. I was like, oh my God, I hate this. This is not for me. And then I get into professional wrestling, and oh my God, it was more political than politics was.
right. Yeah.
With the way it was like, this is my town, this is my territory. You can't be here. If you work for that person, you're on this list, and you're out, and don't do this, don't talk to him. And oh, you better shake my hand, but not too hard and not too soft and not this way.
Yeah.
And, don't look that guy in the eye when you shake his hand. You got to look at the ground and don't take a picture with that guy. That'll make you a mark, and don't do this and don't do that.
Right.
And I was
Right.
like, man, there's so many damn unwritten rules. And the etiquette was just way too much for me when I was breaking in, and I broke every one of the damn rules, and I was probably as hated as you were then, hearing you to describe what was going on up there. So I guess
Yeah.
it was going on in southern Indiana, it was going on up in central Indiana and northern Indiana. I guess it was all over the place at the time.
Yeah, well, in the '90s too. Like I don't know how it was when you where it was when you were breaking in. Did you break in IWA? Is
Yeah,
that
I mean, until I started working for you and did the that Black Label Pro show the night before I debuted with you. It was all IWA or like co-promoted with IWA, or Ian telling me to help him out by doing something on a show that he was at. But that, yeah, I was all IWA. I had no other experience.
Yeah, see, so when I broke in, it was like all these like guys that had done jobs for WCW and stuff. So they were like WCW superstars. Like that's how they build themselves on flyers and stuff, you know?
Okay.
And they were all like they were all and again, I like to reiterate, I didn't do myself any favors. My attitude did not do me any favors. Like the way that I approached the situation didn't do me any favors. But I was a 14-year-old kid who nobody really smartened up to how things should be done or things, you know what I mean? It's just one day,
Right.
like I made the crowd go crazy. So like I was just booked to do random stuff, you know what I mean? And they, I didn't even have any proper training whatsoever when I started wrestling. You know what I mean? Like I'd had like maybe 2 sessions, and then I trained as I was doing things. Um, but they all had this like attitude of like holier than thou. Like I'm a superstar because I did jobs in the WWF, or I'm a superstar because I did jobs in WCW. Um, and like so which doesn't matter if you did jobs for WCW. It's cool. Like it's a cool story to tell, but it doesn't really matter. The hundreds of people did jobs for WCW. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's a cool thing to have on your resume. Is like, oh, that was a cool experience, but it certainly doesn't make you Ric Flair. You know what I mean?
Right.
Uh, but they wanted to be treated as such, like they were like these big stars. So when I got over and I was getting booked out and I was doing all these different things as like such a young kid, I think it really, really like pissed a lot of them off. You know what I mean? Especially like when I turned 18, like then I started charging people money to do shows. You know what I mean? Like instead of just showing up for the hot dog and the handshake,
Right.
then I started paying some bills and doing those things, and it definitely the local crowd at the time was they just were not fans. They were not on my side. They kept booking me because I was over, but they did not like me at all, and I didn't do myself any favors by my attitude. You know?
Yeah. So like pretty much the same experience that I had coming in to the IWA stuff, except the guys weren't as you know, holier than thou is what you were saying the guys around you were. So I guess I'm lucky in that point. But yeah, I mean, I had no formal training, and zero to this day, never gone through any of that. And it was just, I'd run my mouth in the crowd. I'd run my mouth on the message boards and writing results and recaps. And, Ian would got to know me through my friends that had called into the hotline and would leave messages, and then he'd call back and they'd chit chat and talk and stuff. And he was like, have you ever thought of doing this? And I was like, well, only since I was 4 watching it, in my
Right.
house.
Yeah.
I've been training myself for this, my whole life without ever thinking I'd ever have the chance to actually do it.
Right.
But then, just thrown out there, and like you said, nobody wisened me up. Nobody taught me. Nobody said this is the protocol. This is do this, act this way. Mind just shut up and listen. Nobody told me any of that stuff. You're just thrown out there, and then I'd go in front of the people, and
Right.
Ian would be like, okay, I want you to say ABC, and interject yourself into the finish, and and I just go out there and do what I was told. And
Right.
sometimes it would work, sometimes it'd be an off night, but until Tracy Smothers sat me down 4 years in, Tracy Smothers is sitting me down and saying, don't call me an old man. That does, don't do that, because then you're either just beating up an old man and you've done nothing, or you just lost to an old man and now you're a piece of shit. So
Right.
he's like, he was the first one to like start breaking things down, but I was 4 years in at that point,
Yeah.
and it's hard to break habits and things like that at that point after you've been doing something for 4 years,
Right.
and so a lot of similar experiences there. But luckily, the crew that we had in IWA, I mean, they pretty much all of them had spent time on Memphis TV. A lot of them had gone through and done their jobs in, AWA, WWF, WCW. They had those experiences, but they didn't. I mean, I guess since everybody in the locker room was on that level and everybody had those same experiences, they didn't have the "I'm better than you" kind of thing. And a lot
Right.
of the times I wouldn't be hanging out in the locker room. I'd be ring announcing, or I'd be on commentary, or I'm managing six different guys, so I'm out at the ring for every damn match on these shows.
Yeah.
So I didn't spend a lot of time in the dressing room to experience that stuff. So maybe there was a little bit of it that I just never saw, and I got lucky that way. But it's funny that we had such similar beginnings of the,
Right.
being thrown out there, because the crowd, we could make the crowd hate us.
Right. Well, and
And,
I think the one good thing about IWA though is like those people, like, I mean, Tracy was like actually a star. You know what I mean?
right,
Like Bull Payne actually was wrestling on TV every week. Like he was actually doing tours of Puerto Rico and stuff like that.
right,
Like,
right,
so you were like working with these people who actually did something worth doing.
right. And I mean, there
Um,
was Buddy Landell, there was
right.
Tommy Rich, my favorite wrestler growing up, and
Right.
NWA world champion. You had the guys that had the credentials to have that attitude if they wanted to, but I just never really encountered it very much,
Right.
especially those early days with those guys. So that was pretty cool. So you're in it. You break in real young, and then you
Yeah.
said around 18 you're manning up and deciding that you're going to speak up for yourself a little more, and you're going to start asking for the paydays. Um, were you doing any of the deathmatch stuff at this point in time, or did that come later?
So I did a barbed wire baseball bat match the week that I turned 18.
Okay.
Because nobody would let me do it before that.
Well, at least they
So
waited until you were like an illegal adult before they did
right,
something
yeah,
like that.
nobody would let me do it before that. But like I loved again, I grew up in Texas, so I loved Bruiser Brody. I loved
Okay.
Terry Gordy. I loved like guys like Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. Like I love that style of wrestling. You know what I mean? So I got that, that IWA Japan King of the Deathmatch 1995 tape, and I wore that thing out. Um, so that was kind of my. I always wanted to do death matches. I don't. I don't know that I always wanted. I don't know that I wanted to take it to the level that I did take it to, like as far as like the extremeness of it. And I think that I don't know that that's all I wanted to do, but it became, it became all I did for a while. Like it was, if I wrestled 5 matches, 4 of them were death matches. You know what I mean?
Right.
And every now and then I would still get to wrestle a regular match, but they were few and far between. Um, not saying I regret. I don't regret doing death matches. I just, yeah, if I had a second chance, I would have focused more on. I probably would have tried harder to be like Terry Gordy, and less like Ian Rodden or Necro Butcher. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, if I'm being honest, that's probably what I would have tried to do because there's a point in time like I really honestly believe like when I turned, when I was younger, I was doing like more hybrid stuff. Like um, that's one of the ways that me and JC bonded, and me and these other guys like I did more hybrid wrestling stuff until I really got deep in like my series of matches with Necro Butcher and stuff, and slowly I stopped doing the actual wrestling and just started doing just death matching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
And I can it and it's hard, it's actors complain about it all the time where you get pigeonholed into one thing. You have a character or you're on a show and no one can see you as anything other than that one thing, you
right.
know, and then you get pigeonholed into where he's got to be that at all times. And I saw it happen all the time with the deathmatch guys, you
Yeah.
know, and I'm going to ask you about this because I'm just how I perceived it. So I don't know if it was real or not. But it always seemed to me with like a lot of the guys, you know, it was it was easier to get booked as the deathmatch guy because there was such a smaller grouping of people that were willing to do it.
For sure.
And, like there's a million guys that'll go out. You could find a million people to go out in the wrestling ring and just wrestle a regular match.
Right.
There's a million of those guys, and you know, local is cheaper is what a lot of the places are going to go. You know,
Right.
as opposed to paying to bring have you travel into the show. But the deathmatch guys, it's a small pool. It's a smaller pool to pick from if you want somebody that can do it well. So once you show that you can do it well, you're almost, to me, it seemed like you were almost pigeonholing yourself into that if you wanted to keep getting consistently booked.
Right.
Was that anything that was like running through your mind as this is happening to you? Because now you're talking about I've got these regrets, and maybe I should have stayed more hybrid, maybe not have stayed away from getting put into that hardcore box. Was part of the thinking as you're doing it like this is what's getting me booked, this is what's getting me paid, so I need to keep doing it, or was it something that wasn't even in your head and just all of a sudden you're there without thinking about it?
Oh, I think it started off like something that just kind of happened, right? Like, um, because when it started off, like I was still doing regular matches, and then I'd do a death match here, a death match there, and then it became more and more like the more I started wrestling like the big death match guys and started working with those guys, and the more people started paying attention to me, the more it became, okay, this is what he does, this is who he is, and I was very fortunate to be able to like I made a full-time living off of wrestling in the early 2000s when very few people could pay their bills wrestling. Now, my living situation was really good. I had roommates, I had different situations going on, so my bills were not very expensive. I think if I remember right, my rent and utilities was like $200 a month. So like
Yeah,
I could
it's
afford.
crazy to think of the pricing back
Yeah.
then because I know I moved in, like I've told the story on here where Ian Rotten's dad had an apartment, because when I first graduated college in the May of '99, I moved over to Louisville and I moved into Ian's trailer, and it was like Corporal, Ian, um, Mark Wolf had just moved in, and
Yeah,
you
the
know,
house. Huh?
and he had, there was him, Patty, John Calvin, they Patty's other son Joey at the time, and you know, and Ian's dad when I first moved in was living there too. So I mean, there's like 8, 9 of us in a double wide trailer, you know, on top of each other, and it was like miserable every day. And so Ian's dad found an apartment right up the street and went and moved into it. And then when he decided to go move back to Florida because he had had enough of being around everybody, then I moved into his apartment and took over the rent. One bedroom apartment, $300
Yeah, that's wild.
for the rent, and I'm like, you couldn't you couldn't even get a pot to piss in a bill, for $300 in rent now. And
Yeah, for sure.
it's just insane how that's changed. So, you know, so yeah, when you're at that time frame, it was a lot easier, especially if you had roommates, to be able to pull something like that off. So
Yeah, but the cool part for me was I literally got to live being a wrestler 24/7, which like most people at that time, most people were not getting to do that back then. Most
no,
people were
not at
having to
all.
work like regular jobs, and I was legitimately wrestling roughly like 4 times a week on an average week, sometimes more, depending on what the week was. You know what I mean? Um, but I wrestled every Friday, Saturday, Tuesday, and Wednesday for sure. Sometimes I wrestled Sundays. Sometimes I wrestled, other days too. But those days I always wrestled for sure. Um, so it was cool, and it was good. It didn't become like a negative really until um, there was like this whole the old school deathmatch worker, like we let the fans work us instead of us working the fans. There's a whole lot of that. There was a lot of like, like Ian, if you ain't hardcore, you ain't shit. If you're not hitting people for real, you're not shit. Like if you're not doing this, you're not shit, which is ridiculous if you think about it. Because like wrestling is not real. It's a work. Like it's not
Right,
supposed to be real. Like now, don't get me wrong. I go out there now and I'm snug. Like I work very snug with people, but I don't. I don't have to punch. I don't have to punch somebody in the teeth as hard as I can. Like it doesn't make sense. That's not what
right,
we're supposed to do, right?
right,
Um, and but we definitely let the fans work us into a we have to be like this. We have to hurt ourselves for real, or else we're not really paying our dues. We don't really deserve it if we're not getting hurt for real.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was definitely, and I mean, a little bit of it understood, with IWA, the fan, that first row was like 4 feet from the ring.
yeah,
So those fans could see whether you're making contact or not,
sure,
you know. So I could see the point, and Ian's deal was he'd be on the, like, they can stay home and watch wrestling on TV for free. Of You got to give them something that they can't see for free on TV. So he wanted he was pushing for the realness of it,
yeah,
and so I can see a little bit of that, but the fact that he didn't do any promoting to actually get the people in there to see that. So these guys are killing themselves and beating the shit out of each other in front of the same 40, 50 people twice a
right,
week. It doesn't make sense. If it's not selling out the building, as you said, it was kind of silly to go out there and brutalize yourself. And
right,
so many of your contemporaries, I won't call them my contemporaries because I wasn't doing it, but the people that I was around, your contemporaries from that time frame, like so many of those guys, I feel miserable watching them try to walk around and get
yeah,
around, and it almost, we would, even as it was happening, we would joke, that Ian would walk around like Yoda in the Star Wars prequels that had come out at that time, where it's like, oh, can barely move and look like a 150-year-old man, and then all of a sudden he gets into the ring and he's, flipping all over the place and doing all the stuff, and it's like, you know, in the long run, isn't going to be worth all that. And I think
right.
I think a lot of the guys would probably now say that, it really wasn't.
Yeah. But and I just want to reiterate, like I love like I told you my favorite wrestlers are Brody, Stan Hansen, Terry Gordy, like those guys. Like so I love like physical wrestling. Like I love like I want to look at it and I want to believe that it's real. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um so I'm all for like if you watch even my WrestleArts matches, like when the match with Tankman comes out, like I took like an old school ass beating in that match because it's what the match required. You know what I'm saying? Um, and I want to make sure that the crowd hears when they hear that I'm making contact. I just don't know that like swelling your eyes shut every night it makes sense.
Right.
Right? Like swelling your eyes shut in front of 10 people doesn't make any sense. Like breaking your
No, it
head
does not.
because you're punching people so hard just
Right.
doesn't make sense. Not to me. If somebody else wants to do it, like more power to them. It just doesn't make sense to me to kill myself for nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, you know, we were talking off air when I sent you some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. And, you're talking about, you're wrestling 4 times a week or whatever. And like Cage Match doesn't have any of that stuff.
Right.
It doesn't have any of that stuff at all. It's like, you know,
For you too, man.
it says in your bio on Cage Match that your career started in '97, right?
Yeah.
But then it doesn't have a match. It has no matches for you until 2001. And
Right.
that's 4 years of your career. A lot of it, wrestling multiple times a week, and there's no record of it. There's no video of it, um, no results of it, no no way to pass on that knowledge without being on shows like this and talking about it. Same with a lot of as I was talking to you, a lot of the IWA stuff. It was just the 2,500 people, whatever was there, just those people saw it,
Right.
and the websites that house the results at for you're long gone and none of that stuff saved and whatever. Like, was there any specific moments of that, first 4 years that's really just undocumented? Any specific things that stick out to you that you'd like people to know, hey, I did this, and I feel like it's a shame that there's no record of it and no video of it? Is
I don't, to be honest with you, I think that a lot of it was pretty unremarkable. I think that I actually started in November of 96.
okay.
Um, so I think that that's because that's when November 28th will be my last match at WrestleArts. So that's should be the 30-year mark. So that's kind of what we were going for there. But it's pretty unremarkable. It's me working with guys like Dice Man Ronnie Vegas and like the High Rollers and the Botswana Beast and in front of 20 or 30 people wherever they'll book a little kid to wrestle shows. It wasn't until I graduated from high school that like things really took off anyway. Unfortunately, I got a lot better at monetizing my footage later on. Like I don't know if you remember, but I was always pumping out little DVDs and stuff. I had my own little DVD studio and all that. Um, it's pretty unremarkable stuff. Just local indies, 20 miler stuff, 30 miler stuff. Um, Wrestling local heroes.
See, now that was your opportunity to Hulk Hogan this thing up and
That's what I
talk
should
about
have
how
done.
you once wrestled in front of 5,000 people in this you know beat
That's
up
what I should have done.
car dealership,
Uh,
and you body slammed Big John Studd on this and who can say it didn't happen? There's
you're right.
other
That's
than
a good point.
that was your opportunity. I handed it to you,
Hanson, I blew it. I
and you
blew it.
blew it.
That's the story of
Uh,
my career, right? I got the opportunity and I blew it.
yeah, well, um, so the guy that edits this for me and gets it put together and adds the wrestling footage onto it, Prophet of Ash. So I'm dealing with two prophets here. you know, which gets
Incidentally, that
confused.
was my original Gmail was profitofash@gmail.com.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's
Okay.
kind of weird, yeah.
Yeah. So he was telling me about IPW
Yeah, the Sandy
and
Pro.
the stuff that you were doing there. So we'll pivot to that because there's like actual results listed, and I think he said that some of this is even like available on Smart Mark and stuff. So it was around the time that we had hooked up with Smart Mark as well. So um, he was telling me about series of matches that you had with Necro and Corporal, and I saw there was even a match that you had with Toby, who we're going to talk about later because you got another match with him coming up
Yeah.
the day after this premieres. You're going to be facing Toby again, but one of the ones that he told me about that I just have to know more about is he said you were wrestling Necro and you broke your arm in the middle of the match, and you continued on with the match and was just swinging your broken arm around like it was a club and using it as a weapon to prolong the match. Do you have memories of that match? What can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so I'd had a series of matches with Necro Butcher up until that point, and that's like when I was starting to really build up some steam on like because the message boards were starting to become a thing. So like on
Right.
message boards, people were starting to talk about me and things like that. And I was a relentless self promoter, so I was on the message boards, posting my pictures and posting my whatever I could post at the time. Um, but we'd worked a few times, and I believe this was after the three-way that won Hardcore Match of the Year for IPW, in like 2003 maybe, um, somewhere around there,
Yeah, it
2003.
was 2003 that a bunch of it looked like these matches happened. So yeah, it would have had to
Yeah.
have been around there.
So um, I remember getting to the building and I had all these ideas for all this crazy stuff I wanted to do and all these big spots and all these different things. And I remember Necro said to me, he goes, "We can do all that, but they just want to see us punch each other in the face." And that's kind of when my that spiral I talked about, that's when that started to
Right.
happen. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's what I did. Like, but I remember he threw a chair and the chair hit me in the arm and broke my arm and the bone came out a little bit.
Oh
And he
God.
and we're going there, and he said, I told him if you watch the tape, which I might still have it somewhere. It was on a one of IPW Smart Mark releases, like as a bonus match. He
What
picks
a
me up.
bonus.
Yeah, right, literal bonus. He picks me up and he sits me in the chair, and he goes, I go, you can tell me when he's picking me up. I say something to him. I tell him my arm is broken, and he goes, how bad do you want it? And then punches me in the face. So like you can see like on my face, like you can see that I'm like, okay, I want it. And I stuck him back and like we did the bar fight spot and I did the whole match like that. I just kept going and I actually didn't miss any bookings at all. Like I just kept going.
No time off whatsoever.
Nope, just kept going.
You
Um,
break your arm, bone hanging out of skin,
yeah.
and you just tape it up and keep going on out there, huh?
So I wore an air cast. Like I had an air cast on, and then I just would tape the crap out of the air cast. And I didn't get the whole cast or anything because I didn't want to lose any bookings or take any time off, and I was afraid if I got the whole cast that people wouldn't book me. You know what I mean? So I got an air cast and just kept going.
Now, I haven't talked about this on the podcast before, um, but it was one of the things that I noticed during my time. You know, you could not get the guys to go to a hospital. Couldn't
Right.
do it. And if they did, they'd be using fake names, they'd be using fake social security numbers,
Yeah.
and
I
then
did
they
that.
would
I
they
did
and
that in
then
Philly.
they would also use fake stories. And I would just hear like guys would just talk about all these, like I think Pondo one time told me that one time he went to the, had to go to the emergency room, and he had glass in his head and everything from like I think somebody hit him with a window pane of glass or whatever, and like some of the glass was still embedded in his head, and he like, oh well, and when the doctor asked what happened, talking about oh well, me and my wife were having sex and it was going real hard and banging into the wall, and a picture came fell off and busted over my head, and it's like just coming up with the wildest damn stories that you could tell in order to, like, I don't know what they were trying to like. I mean, if you're using a fake name and using a fake social security number, I guess maybe they didn't want him to be able to like try to track them down on the internet based on wrestling results that you were given. So maybe that was the reason as to why they just wouldn't say, "Oh, I was wrestling at the VFW and this happened to me." And I had my one of my best friends that I broke into the business with, that I was going to UK with, Ben Rich, episode 1, told the story of, he was like me before me, and he wrote for the school newspaper, and he was the biggest heel in the newspaper, and every week his column would just be the most grotesque, obnoxious shit to get as much hate mail as he could garner. And so he teamed up with another one of our friends that was going to the shows to bring IWA to Lexington, and to set up like he was going to be involved, and he was going to get his ass kicked on this show to get people to buy because all those Kentucky students hated him. They're going to buy tickets to come out and watch him get beat up. So he's going to do a run in and try to attack Ian at the Kmart building in Louisville to set up for this Lexington show. And he does it. He gets into the ring. Ian goes to give him the Rotten Rush double arm DDT, and my buddy panics because he didn't know what the hell he was doing. And again, not really anything gone over with him. It was just tuck your chin was all he was told. And he freaks out and he puts his arm down to try to brace himself, and like dislocates his shoulder on impact. And the doctor that Ian had on site at the Kmart building taped a cardboard box to him as a sling. And when he went to when we took him to the emergency room, he's got insurance, he's got his parents' insurance. So he gives them his name, he gives them the insurance number. But he tells them, "Oh, well, we were at the wrestling show, but I was, being an ass out in the parking lot, and I tried to jump off the bumper of the car to hit my buddy, and he moved, and I fell and went shoulder first into the concrete." And I'm like, so you gave him 75% truth kind of thing, and whatever. It still had its, still gotta be a worker and gotta work that story. So, did you just did you actually go to try to have the arm reset and just told him no cast, or are you doing it all on?
No cast. Yeah, I told them I didn't want to cast, and they were going to try and put one on anyway. And I was like, I'm just going to cut it off if you put it on. So they didn't. They gave me an air cast, and that's what they put on it.
Okay. And did you tell them the true story of what happened to you, or did you make something up, a wild story as well?
Oh no, I told them the truth. I
Okay.
didn't have insurance anyway, so they weren't going to reject it. I mean, they were going to fix it regardless. My insurance company didn't care because they were non-existent.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, on the side of that reminds me when you were talking about wild stories. I do remember. I just remembered some things that happened prior to that 2001 that we kind of briefly touched on before. That it's kind of funny. Um, I was actually the booker of this place called Interstate Championship Wrestling
Okay.
when I was like 16, and then
Okay.
so we booked New Jack for a show.
Okay.
All right. And so imagine the 16, you knew New Jack.
I
Ima-
did. I did know
Imagine a
New Jack.
16-year-old kid coming up to New Jack telling him, "Hey, I need you to do this, this, and this tonight." You can already imagine how that went.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So within seconds, he's like threatening to kill me. He's got like a knife, and he's like, "I'm gonna cut your throat," and all this stuff. And I literally had no clue what happened. I was like, I don't know what went wrong in there. I'm not sure. Like, I don't know what happened. So I don't think he knew I was the booker to begin with, right? So I come up and
Yeah.
I'm talking to him. Then they're like, just stay away from New Jack. We'll work in an intermediary and all this. So I'm like, whatever. So I had to come out of the locker room. He's in the ring doing pictures. And I had to come out of the locker room to handle the situation real quick. And then I walked by him when he's in the ring doing pictures. So you can already guess where that's going. I got back in the locker room and he wants to talk to me again. And he's like, you fucking with my picture money. He's like, I'll kill you. I'll kill you. He's like throwing chairs and stuff. And yeah, he's like, I've killed people for less. I've killed people for real. And yeah, all that stuff. So that was kind of a funny. And incidentally, it wasn't too much longer after that that I realized I was out of my league, and Abyss took over as the booker.
Okay.
Um, so I ended up managing Abyss for a while too. Um, but yeah, that was one of I was legitimately scared to death of New Jack that night. Like I was like, I don't know what I did wrong here, but like New Jack is gonna kill me. Which is incidentally during that time frame was the first time I met Ian as well. So um,
Okay.
now at that
Was
point I
Ian on
wasn't.
that show too, or it was just around that time?
He was on a different one. He wrestled this
Okay.
guy named Bullet, and he beat the shit out of Bullet with a baseball bat, dude. He literally like I don't know. Bullet was such a nice guy. He kind of had like a white New Jack in him. He's like the white New Jack, and
Okay.
which is kind of ridiculous on its own, I guess. But he
Yeah.
uh he comes out and he just I don't know what Bullet did. Like if he didn't sell something right for Ian, or he did something that pissed Ian off. And Ian literally, I heard the baseball bat bounce off at Bullet's head. Like you could hear it. It was literally just like a dunk. So like and Bullet quit after that. He just disappeared. He was gone. Like that was the end of it. Nobody talked to him again. Like he didn't wrestle anymore. Um,
I can't say I blame him.
yeah, Ian beat his ass, dude. It was crazy.
So I'll quickly tell you because I told you that if you said your New Jack, I'd tell mine. I've said it on the podcast before, so I'll just give a condensed version of it. But New Jack was booked to be on a show in Highland, and Ian, I think, was wrestling for somebody out in like California or something that night. He was somewhere else, so I'm running the show, and New Jack doesn't show up, doesn't show up, doesn't show up, and I've just assumed he's a no show, and not worried about it. Okay, whatever. And they're getting ready to they're starting to set up the cage during intermission in the middle of the show for it's like Eddie Kingston and Steve Stone defending the IWA Mid South tag titles against Ryan Boz and Brad Bradley. And we're going over stuff. My first night managing Eddie Kingston, so I've bought the tag titles for the Fannin family. Blackjack Marciano had decided to quit the business, so Eddie needed a new partner. So I buy his contract, bring him into the family, and team him up with Steve Stone to defend the tag titles. And we're going over the match, and one of the things that I would always try to do is color scheme match the guy I'm managing. And since, Eddie Kingston was the wild cards and he wore all white, I'm wearing all white. So I got white khakis, I got a white dress shirt, and that's what I'm wearing for this match. And New Jack shows up, drunk off his ass, could barely walk. And he comes in through the locker room and he's like saying his hellos to everybody. And we're going over the match. And somehow he's got like a black Sharpie in his hand. I don't even know how he just must have had it or took it from somebody as he's walking around. And he gets up to me and he takes the cap off the black Sharpie and he tries to write all over my white shirt. And I finally tell him, get the fuck away from me and stop it. And he looks at me and he goes, who the fuck do you think you are? And I go, I'm the motherfucker that's not paying you at the end of the night because you're fucking with me and then you're late and you're drunk. And he's like, whoa, 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 I'm fucking working for Ian Rotten. Who the fuck are you? And I'm like, Ian Rotten's not here. I'm in charge. You're working for me. And he's like, whoa, I didn't know any of this, and then he's up in my face and like screaming at me. And Tracy Smothers is trying to pull us apart. Corporal's trying to pull us apart. Chris Hero's freaking out and trying to pull us apart. And I'm like, no, fuck you. You're not coming into my dressing room and disrespecting me like this. And I don't give a fuck who you are. And I
Yeah.
mean, but I could tell he didn't have any damn, knife. But I was like, I had like a death wish back then. I didn't give a shit one way or the other. And,
You're way braver
so
than me because I was 16 years old and I was scared to death. I'm gonna be
yeah,
honest with you.
I had there was no doubts in my mind that if he wanted to, he would have killed me, but I didn't care at that. I
Yeah.
was like, a part of me would have welcomed that at that point in my life. And so like me and Manawa were telling the story because then he goes out to the ring and just starts cutting his own promo and talking all this crazy shit. And I go out and I'm telling Manawa, cut his mic. I'm telling him to cut the mic, and Manawa's like, hell no, I ain't fucking doing that. And so then I'm
No, I
trying to
know what
pull
to
the
do.
wires out of the speakers myself and turn it and I'd pull out the cord out of one speaker and Manawa'd plug it back in as I'm trying to plug out the other. I mean, it was like a Keystone Cops kind of thing going on
I
around
love that so
and,
much, man.
and I'm like, I was like, no, kill me if you want, but you're not disrespecting me tonight, kind of deal.
Well,
And then
it's
Tracy Smothers ended up smoothing things out and calming New Jack down, and he made us shake. Tracy made us shake hands, and New Jack said, "You're the craziest white boy I've ever met." And I'm like, "Well, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment coming from you."
it's weird because like later, like the next time I saw New Jack was at the ECW arena on one of the backseat shows. And he remembered me somehow. He remembered that whole thing, and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing here?" And then like I was like, "Oh no, not again, dude." I was like, "I didn't even do anything. I'm just sitting over here minding my own business." And after that, we were just friends. Like he was always trying to get me to hook him up with drugs, and I was like, Jack, I still don't do drugs, dude. Like I was like, I didn't smoke weed, I didn't drink, I did nothing. I've been sober, like I did all that stuff sober, you know what I mean? But he's a character, man. He'd do little things like he was like when you staple somebody in the head, you take your thumb and you just do one of those with it right on the staple. And I was like, that seems a little unnecessary, Jack.
A
Yeah.
lot of what he did was a little unnecessary, but
I'll tell you, you mentioned Chris Hero. Chris Hero hates me. He's like, and he hates me over something like it didn't even. I legitimately had nothing to do with it. I was
wow.
not near like it. I swear to you, I put my right hand on the face of my child and swear right now, I had nothing to do with it whatsoever. He thought he was wrestling his wife beater for Insane Wrestling Alliance, which is where I started.
Okay.
And he thinks that I kicked a table. He did a moonsault off the top rope. He was he either did the moonsault to the outside or he caught the moonsault to the outside. It was one or the other. But either way, he thinks that I pushed the table under him and caused him to land like half on the table.
Mm.
Which I legitimately I wasn't even there. Like it's like like Davy Boy. I wasn't even there. Like I had nothing to do with it, man. Like so yeah, Heroes had heat with me for like all these years over something I had nothing to do with. But I tried to
well,
explain it to him, but he doesn't believe me.
yeah, and there's no video. There's no, like we talked earlier. There's no way to prove one way or the other. And
Yeah,
once somebody makes up their mind, that's what it is. So we really got sidetracked there with different things
yeah,
on talking about the matches with Corporal and Necro, but you brought up the three-way no rope barbed wire match that you
yeah,
said was was the death match of the year for that company. And
yeah.
what are your memories of that three-way dance? And the Prophet of Ash that does the editing said his memory was that was probably the match that got you into IWA, but it looked like from the results timeline that you were still a ways off from making it into an IWA show. But maybe that was it like Corporal and Necro vouching for you that got you in? Or first talk about the match, and then we can talk about how you got into IWA.
All right. So when we talk about what got me into IWA, it starts way before that match. But we won't, I'll kind of do things in order so we don't get lost. But um, that match was it was one of my favorite matches that I ever had. I think that it was the match that I proved like that I could go with like the big guys of deathmatch wrestling at the time. I think that Necro already respected me at that point. I think that but I think I really like cemented it with Corp and stuff too at that time. Um, but yeah, we did a lot of crazy stuff. Like we had these chairs that thumbtacks were stuck to, like they didn't come off, like they were stuck to the chairs. And like I took like an assisted power bomb on those chairs, and like we used skewer boards and the no row barbed wires and the barbed wire baseball bats. And um, I think that it to me it was kind of like it was kind of like the match that proved that I belonged on a bigger level. You know what I mean? Um, that's my opinion. That's what I felt like was the case. And I think there was a lot of people's opinion too, because after that, like we went into the match where I broke my arm, and it was just I was everywhere after that. Like I don't know if you remember, but I was everywhere before I was in IWA. I was almost everywhere else. Like I was wrestling on the
Right.
East Coast and Deep South. Like, but I think that that's the match that really got me a good buzz going for sure.
Right. Okay. So you said that, but what got you into IWA started even before that, you said?
For sure. So when I first started doing death matches, I talked to Dave Prazak all the time. I was always back on AIM. We were always
Okay.
talking on Real Instant Messenger, and he was like, "Come train with Ian." I talked to Ian. Ian will train you for free and all this. Like, just come in and work with Ian, and these guys will take care of you and they'll teach you and all this and all that. But I wouldn't go because me and Diehard Dustin Lee were really good friends, and he had his whole experience down there before that.
Right.
Um, so I wouldn't sell out. I wouldn't sell out Dustin and go to IWA until like once him and Ian had kind of squashed their beef a little bit.
Mhm.
That's when I went to IWA for the first time.
Okay.
But I had the opportunity to go a few times, but it just I'm pretty loyal to a fault sometimes. I'm like I've died on my shield a few times. You know what I mean? And that was probably one of those things, because if I would have gone in 2001, um, I would have really kind of been at the front of that whole like tape trading movement with IWA and
Right.
CZW and all that. And so I probably cost myself a lot of opportunity by not doing that. But um, at the same time, I stood on the principles of being a good friend, and I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know, I can respect that. I've definitely, I was loyal to a fault as well. So I could understand that and definitely respect that. So, speaking of diehard Dustin, it still shocks me that was brought to my attention that he's over in Ukraine, doing death matches in Ukraine now. And then
Yeah.
I saw after that it came out that he was over there like saving pets and different things. So, good on him that he's over there trying to make a difference. So
Yeah, Die Hard is legitimately crazy, which I'm sure you know. He's legit,
yes,
but
yes,
when I wish I I wish that me and Die Hard, sometimes I wish we were still friends, because Die Hard, when he's on your team, like he's one of the best friends you could ever hope to have. But if you piss him off, dude, if you do something that he thinks that you're like shady to him for one minor little thing, it is over. It's a full meltdown. Like there's no holding back. There's no decorum. Um, there's no limit to what he will say or do, as far as like to expose you and make you look bad.
right.
At least that's how it was. Maybe he's different now. I haven't really talked to him in a long time, but
Yeah, yeah, I've not.
um,
I had not even thought of him until like it started making the rounds on the internet that he was in Ukraine doing. I was like, I couldn't even believe that there was death matches going on in Ukraine. I'm like,
Right during the
I would
war.
have thought that there was more pressing matters over there. You could just look out your window and see death anytime you wanted. And
Right.
I didn't know that there was really a market for death matches there, but then evidently there is. So,
But Dustin
uh,
is a good deathmatch worker too. Like I loved working with Dustin. I think my best matches were with Dustin overall. I think Dustin's my favorite opponent ever. And honestly, like if I thought that it would sell tickets, I would want my last match to be against Dustin. Because I think that like we had this match. God, it was before I worked for IPW because IPW wouldn't touch me with a 10-foot pole either because I had such a negative reputation for being an asshole. Um, but we had this match in a parking lot at this place called the Festiva, maybe. I don't know. It was like an underground like concert. No, it was called the Purple Underground. No, it was not. I don't know. It was called. I think it was called something that started with an F. But it was ran by the guy that ran the Purple Underground before that. And that's neither here nor there. But we had this match outside, and to that, like I still swear that that was the best match I ever had, and I wish that it was on tape because I think that me and Dustin both would have been everywhere after that because it was crazy. It was like to me it was everything that a death match should have been. It was great wrestling. It was high flying. It was hard hitting. It was insane. Like the finish was I was laying on chairs with light tubes all over me. And he did a springboard senton to the outside of the ring on top of all that, and a piece of glass actually got stuck just a little bit in my neck, just a
mm,
little bit. Like it didn't get me good, but like with the blood and everything, and like that little stick, it was sticking straight out. So it looked like I had been stabbed in the neck, and I was so bloody that it looked like Apollo Star was freaking out. Like he was like he cut his neck. He could like, and everybody was going nuts. And I'm totally fine. So it was
wow.
just like the perfect storm, and it just
Okay.
it was great. Like, and who knows, maybe we'd watch it back and the match would suck, but it felt so good. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
that's one of the bad things about you know a lot of this stuff being the WWE Vault and WCW Vault on YouTube, coming up with all this lost footage and airing stuff. And like, I'll be all excited, be like, oh man, I loved that 40 years ago when I saw it. And then you put it on and you're like, ooh, that's not as good as I remember. So,
right,
a lot of times, you build it up in your own mind, and then you end up disappointed. So yeah, it might be better that it's lost in time, and then you can keep it in that glorified spot as opposed to being shattered if you rewatched it and decided it wasn't as good as you remembered.
right. Yeah, but the moral of the story is I loved Dustin. I loved working with him. That's why I took him to IWA Deep South with me when I knew Smart Mark was going to be there because I knew that that was going to be like my best opportunity to look at my best. You know what I mean?
Okay, was that their death match tournament that got shut down?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that was going to be the next question because it actually happened before the IWA Mid South King of the Death matches that year by a few weeks. So October 22nd, 2005 was the date on Cage Match. IWA Deep South. But I don't know if they were calling it King of the Death match at that point
Yeah, the
or
first one was King of the Death match.
so you're against Diehard Dustin, and during your match, the tournament gets shut down. What happened?
All right, you got to keep in mind, this was in like Podunk, Alabama, like at a community center, like for like kids were like playing basketball before we got there and started setting up. We show up to this place and it literally is like old ladies with their grandkids. And like look at the like really look at the footage and look at the crowd. Like they had no clue what they were coming for. Like they had no clue what was about to happen, right? And me and Dustin, we didn't really do anything too crazy. I think we had a good solid death match. Like a good first round of a tournament death match. it wasn't, you know, sheer like pure over the topness like you see now, where like every match is everything is possible. Like we definitely held back for more to be done later in the night. Um, but I think it was just like a good solid match, like for two guys that were like getting their smart mark break. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, we hit each other hard. We had some cool spots. The problem was I swung a light tube at him and I swung it at his head. But if you watch the video, he goes like this. And when he goes like this, it hit him here and scooped out part of his shoulder. So
Oof.
like there was a divot in his shoulder. And so now there's like there was already blood everywhere, but now like blood is pouring everywhere. And he starts screaming about how he's hurt for real and he's gonna like he's bleeding out and all this stuff. Like you can hear him on the video screaming it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
Um, so it just caused like this sheer panic and this utter pandemonium. And within 10 minutes, the cops were there shutting everything down. Um, and it's funny because Dustin is in the back. He's talking about on the interview after the match. He's like, "This is my last death match. I hope you guys loved it." And then he ended up doing, you know, tons more. He's still doing them over in the Ukraine. So
Right.
uh, it's funny how that worked out. But um, yeah, that's what happened. Just that light tube scooped him. Um, yeah, it was just
Well,
kind of a freak accident.
in glass, you can't tell glass where to shatter,
Yeah,
where the broken glass is going to go after that. You know,
right,
it's one of those, you know, and I hear the, you know, the issues that no holds bar, formerly ICW no holds barred, now just no holds barred, um, had with getting sued by a fan, um, at a show, and it like it blows my mind to this day that IWA Mid South never got sued by a fan
right,
with all the flying glass, you know, from all those light tubes and everything just flying
right.
out into the crowd and
They got lucky.
and stuff. And I mean, I guess they were probably like, you know, not worth their time to, what are you going to get from Ian Rotten if you sued him, you know, kind of deal. So
Right.
maybe that was more the protection behind it, like nobody wanted.
There's nothing to take.
There's nothing to take.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it just amazes me thinking back of guys that got, you know, Necro got severely injured by glass, Corporal got severely injured by glass, and how much of it just flew out into the crowd, and that there wasn't more damage. So I could definitely see where a light tube could just completely upend and cancel a deathmatch tournament in the middle of
Right.
the first round. Um,
Yeah.
it's said that you had won that match against Dustin. Um, but then when the tournament restarted, I guess they just redid the entire tournament. The
Yeah.
first round
Mhm.
results didn't count or whatever, and you end up losing the next time around. Was that a punishment for causing the first one to get canceled? Was it just how it played out? Was there like heat that followed you from that, or was it all right?
So I don't think that there was any heat. Like I didn't have any heat with Kevin over that, and I could tell you some stories about Kevin. I think honestly, what happened is I think that it was like he was working more with Ian at that point, and I think that it was more of an Ian call. Because originally, so in the original tournament, I was supposed to wrestle Spider Boudreaux in the second round, which I did
Okay.
not want to do because Spider Boudreaux, God bless his soul, he was a nice guy, but he was the shits. He was terrible. So I did not want to work with Spider Boudreaux, but I was gonna have to work with Spider Boudreaux, and then it was supposed to be me, Tank, and I think Pondo in the finals. Were supposed to be the finals of that original tournament, and then Tank was gonna go over. Like that was the original plan. I know Tank was gonna go over. I don't know for sure that Pondo was the third person, but I believe that he was. Um, then it was gonna be originally when we got to the second tournament, it was gonna be me and Freak Show in the first round, and then it was gonna be me versus somebody else in the second round. I was going to lose in the second round, but somehow I got switched around. I believe that if I remember correctly, Free Show did not want to work with me. Um, because this was kind of before like Freak Show like really started doing like more brutal death matches, and he was just doing like death matches with his friends.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know for sure why he didn't want to work with me, but I believe that he didn't want to work with me. So I got switched around to me versus Necro. And I remember I was pretty hurt in that match. I'd actually hurt my neck, and was still wrestling anyway. So I was kind of in rough shape during that match. Um, but it was weird because me and Necro had a lot of matches that really clicked, but that one just didn't really click. You know, it wasn't one of our best matches. Um, it was nothing to write home about it. It was a match.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, after that show had gotten the first one had gotten shut down, a few weeks later was your debut in IWA Mid South for the 2005 King of the Death matches. It was you, Corporal, and Necro in another three-way. This one was Fans Bring the Weapons. Any memories of that? And did it mean anything special to you that you were in the IWA Mid South King of the Death matches? Was it just another show? It didn't really have added emphasis for you, or
So it was kind of on one end. On one end, it was like it was a big deal because it was IWA King of the Death matches, and I think anybody that did death matches, like it was a big deal to do the IWA King of the Death matches, right? Like I think at that time period, if you did death matches and you pretended like you didn't want to win the King of the Death matches, you're a liar. You know, like everybody wanted to win that tournament. Um, but I'm not sure that I really like. I think one of the reasons that me and Ian didn't get along is because I didn't mark out for IWA like a lot of people did. I was a fan of IWA and I wanted to wrestle in IWA and I wanted to I wanted to be a part of the King of the Death matches. But you know, you know, if we're being honest, there were a lot of people that would sell their soul to work for Ian. You know what I mean?
right?
And I wasn't going to do that. Um, so I think I was already getting booked everywhere without having to go to IWA. So it wasn't like I had to go there to make my name. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, but I was excited to be there. I wanted to be there. Like it was, and I was in there with Corp and Necro, so I felt super comfortable because I'd worked with both of them a bunch of times up until that point. Um, and I think that we told a good story. I'm not sure that everybody got the story because I'm not sure at that time period that like people were really looking for stories in death matches as much as they were just looking for the sheer brutality in those matches. You know what I mean?
Right.
But the story of the match was it's this IWA newcomer going against these two established veterans, and that's why they both just double team me the whole time. Because it was we're gonna make you like we knew going in that like I'm gonna make you earn your stripes now, and you're gonna like by the end of the
Right.
match, the goal by the end of the match was for me to prove that I was tough enough to be an IWA. Like that was the goal, and I think that we achieved that. I got a lot of heat for the weak punches at the end of the match. But I just spent like 10 minutes getting the shit kicked out of me. So I don't know who is about to pass out and throws haymakers, but
Right.
um, you know, maybe in
Well,
retrospect I should have.
a lot of them probably weren't used to the actually selling shit, so you
Yeah.
know, you
Well, I sold hard during that
got to
match.
have that fighting spirit, you know.
Yeah. But I loved that match. I thought it was a good match overall. That was like 2 weeks after I hurt my neck. So I was in pretty rough shape. But I think that it went well. Um, yeah, and I'm happy with that match to this day. I think it was a good match. And I think that it was that's probably my best IWA Mid South match, if I had to guess.
Okay. So first one, it was all down all downhill after that, you know.
Well,
Uh,
I think that
uh,
there was some solid. Like I think me and Toby was solid. I think the me and Lane and Ian were solid. Um, I don't I don't remember much about the other matches other than the Bull Payne match.
okay,
Um,
that was I got that one down. So December of 2005, so like a month later, you have the barbed wire bat match against Bulls. So I was going to ask if you were like nervous or scared at all before that match because the aura of Bull Payne, even though by that time you had all these matches with Corporal and Necro, so probably not. But a lot of the folks on the podcast have talked about the aura of Bull Payne and how intimidating it was. Was there any of that with you, or?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so for the most part. Until I messed up. Once I messed up, I spent the rest of the match trying to make up for the fact that I messed up.
Okay.
Um, but Bull is a super sweet guy. Like you know that he's a super sweet guy. Like, so I had the opportunity to be around him in the locker room a few times prior to that, so I knew he was a super sweet guy going into it, and talking to him like he was like really easy to talk to and really easy to deal with in the back. So I felt pretty good about it going into it. But I was supposed to get color and I lost my gig. I couldn't find it, so I tried to hard way myself on the baseball bat and I couldn't get any color. So like I'm like shit, dude. I just took Bull Payne's gimmick from him. Like he just used his gimmick on me, and I'm over here screwing it up. So I'm spending the whole time like trying to figure out how to get some color and all that like off of what's around the ring, and that's when I that's how I screwed the match up. Honestly, like
Okay.
that was on me. Bull gave me the opportunity to fire up and to come back. Honestly, I just blew it. Um, yeah, I blew that match. It sucked, and it was my fault. It sucked.
Okay. And so that's the memories you come out with it, and that's a shame. Like you said, Bull, like the difference between Bull out of the ring and Bull in the ring is probably the biggest difference that I've ever noticed with anybody. Because like you said, just an
For sure.
absolute teddy bear out of the ring, and you wouldn't think a thing of, oh, I'm gonna die out there. Um, if you're just talking to him in the back and around him, outside of the business, you know, completely different person. But then the second that music hits and he gets ready to walk out that door and go to the ring, like he like turns it up to 1,000 at that point,
Yeah.
and then it's on, and it creates he had the biggest aura about him out of
Right.
anybody, I think, that was on the shows, and like I said, the difference was just night and day. So I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine, and I've fucked up several times in stuff that he was involved in, and like, yeah, you're just out there going, oh my god, I better make this right in a hurry, or else I'm finished.
Yeah.
uh Kind of feeling with it. So I could definitely see how it would go that way. And
Yeah.
then
He definitely had that aura. You're right about that. He just seemed like when he came out, like he seemed like the baddest dude in the room. You know what I mean?
right.
um, which is great because if he wasn't unreasonably stiff, he wasn't dangerous, he wasn't any of that stuff. He was super easy to work with. I felt fine after the match. Like I didn't like there were people like I'd work with Necro Butcher or Brain Damage, and I'd come back in the back and I'd be like, "Holy shit, dude!" You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
working with Bull Payne, like it was easy. It should have been a great match, and it wasn't because of me. And but yeah, he definitely had that aura. Like you believe that Bull Payne was Bull Payne, you know?
exactly.
Yeah.
So the match that came after that one is, I mean, probably the one that's going to be remembered the most, I would think, out of your IWA matches by fans anyway, was the Razorboard death match, against Corporal on the same show that me and Jimmy Jacobs had our to
Dude,
do.
I wish I
Um,
remembered because that's the question that I got the most afterwards. Or what happened in the locker room? What was it like? And I don't remember. I don't remember any of that, so I couldn't tell you.
yeah. So yeah, you get knocked out in that match. So I was gonna ask if you had, like, what your memories were of that night, but with you getting knocked out, that probably leaves a huge blank spot. So a lot of it, probably forgotten, but have you like gone back and watched the video to rewatch the match at all, or is it just something
Yeah,
you?
I've watched it a few times, and like I did a bunch of like I answered a bunch of questions about it on YouTube when somebody posted it. I think Blake O did a video on it, and I answered people's questions on it. Um, so the only thing I remember from that night, there are three things I remember. One, I had a whole lot of cool spots that I wanted to do with that razor board, like that were like insane spots. Like it would have been the craziest match ever if we would have done all these spots. I probably would have died, but that's neither here nor there. Somebody probably did me a favor by knocking me out. Um, but I remember talking with Brian Danielson in the little concession area. I remember I had those windows where you could see the ring
Uh-huh.
from there. So we were in there, and I don't know what we were talking about, but he was laughing about something. And then I remember before the show, Ian putting razors into the board and he cut his finger on a razor. And that's all I remember about the whole night, other than waking up in the hospital because my roommate, who is Jeremy Ping, who works for AEW now, he took me to the hospital because I just did nothing but ask the same five questions over and over and over again for like hours.
Yeah.
So he took me to the hospital, and that's all I remember from that night.
Okay. Yeah. So I know there was a night where like Suicide Kid had done a dive out of the rafters in the Charlestown Big Blue Barn and hit his head on a table
Oh damn.
and knocked himself out and knocked him, did a number to himself. And the rest of the night, he just kept going, why does my head hurt? What happened out there? How did the match go? And
Yeah.
it was like people were going, God damn it, kid. If you ask me that one more time, I'm just going to smack the shit out of you. Because you didn't understand concussions back then anywhere
Right.
near we did now. And so I could definitely place how you would be sitting there going, oh, yeah, asking that same questions over and over again. So, um, one of the things that Prophet of Ash that edits this, not your old email address, um, one of the things that he brought to my attention, and I didn't even know, but he was like active in building all the weapons and helping out on the shows back then. He told me that it was originally supposed to be Ian and not Corporal in
Yeah.
that match, but that Ian chickened out. Is that your memory? Was it supposed to be Ian? And
Yeah, it was supposed to be Ian because I the promo that I cut that got a lot of buzz on the internet. I don't know if you remember that promo,
mm-mm,
but I cut a promo, um, and it was supposed to be me and Ian, and that's what the graphic was, me and Ian. Um, but he said that he was sick, and that's why I didn't do it. So it was me and Corp. Honestly, I think the match probably would have been better if it was me and Ian, because I think that Ian would have let me do all the crazy stuff that I wanted to do. I think that I wouldn't have got knocked out for real, obviously, if it was Ian. But I don't know that either one of them was really the right opponent. I think that like if it would have been me and JC, like that match would have been remembered totally different. You know what I mean? But who knows? One of us might have died in that match because me and JC, neither one of us were known for being reasonable when it came to taking bumps and stuff.
right.
Um, but like, because I know for sure, I wanted to take I wanted to take like a face bump into the razor blades. I know that I wanted to do like there was something else that I wanted to do too. I wanted to do a bump similar to the one Jun Kasai took on it, and then I wanted to do the one to the outside of the ring to like keep amping it up. Um, but yeah, it I don't really remember too much other than that.
Whose idea was it to do that stipulation?
So it was mine. I was kind of bullshitting. It was like we were in the locker room and we were talking, and everybody was like talking about the Jun Kasai bump, and everybody was going on and on about it. And I was like, I would do Razor Boys. That's no big deal. Like, kind of just BSing a little bit, you know what I mean? And then it was on the message board announced it was me versus Ian. Like, He didn't ask me if I was going to do it. It was
Yeah,
just on the
yeah.
message.
Well, that was his forte back then. He would just announce it and not really give you a chance to say no.
Right.
He did that several times to several people where, like, if they said something in the back and like, oh, I can do this or I could do that, and he would just say it. And
You're gonna do it, huh?
like the night I talked about it earlier, the night that I took the chair shot from Balls Mahoney, I think I was telling you off air about that match. Barbed wire ropes, and like he just announces that I'm gonna wrestle in this match, and it's me and Carmine Despirito, two managers and two wrestlers against the four big baby faces in the company at the time, and
Oh, great.
so they could all get the revenge on me at one time. And you know it wasn't a, hey, are you okay with doing this? It was just announced and it's out there. And okay, you're gonna, if
You're
you
gonna
want to
do
be,
it now.
if you're gonna do it, or you're gonna stand in front of the people and say you're too big of a pussy to do it. And and that was how he did business. And
Yeah.
so I could definitely, not surprised whatsoever that you know a braggadocious comment in the back, or just a off comment, and then all of a sudden it's all right, now it's on the message board and you're doing it.
Now
and
you gotta do it.
and then he's the one that chickens out of it. That's what makes it even better. Okay, so after that match is pretty much King of the Death Matches 2006. You make it to the second night of that tournament, where you had mentioned it as another match that you thought was good in your IWA Mid South tenure. So um, Ian Insane Lane um, was one of the match, and then Toby on night two. Um, you have any memories of King of the Death matches 2006?
Yeah. I thought the first round match was solid. It was a lot of fun. I wasn't happy that Ian hardwayed me with a fork and didn't ask permission first. I would have given permission, but I wish he would have like smartened me up to it beforehand. But I guess Ian kind of had a history of taking from people. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Um, but I thought that was a solid match. I had fun with it. And then the match with me and Toby, I really liked that match. I love Toby. I love working with Toby. If I could work with Toby, if I could have worked with him 100,000 times, I would have. Um, Toby is one of those guys who like will give you the shirt off his back. So like he'll make sure that he takes care of you, that he'll let you get your stuff in. Um, he was already over, so he wasn't worried about making sure that I got to be over too. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
so I loved working with Toby. I loved working with him in IPW. I loved working with him in IWA. I'm sure that I'll love working with him in a few days here as we speak. Um, but I know I'm gonna get beat up. He's gonna beat me up a little bit. But yeah, I thought it was a good match. I thought me and Toby told a good little fun story. We teased the light tube cabins and did some fun things with that because it was a 2 out of 3 light tube cabin match, right?
Yeah, yeah, two out of
Yeah.
three like shoots. Yep.
Yeah, so it was a fun match, and I had fun with that match, and I was glad I had that opportunity. Although my favorite thing from the whole tournament was getting to do commentary with you and Nick Manawa. That was my favorite thing. There's a story that I like to tell people about Nick Manawa. So there was this girl in the front row wearing a leather jacket, and she was a very attractive female. And Nick Manawa he goes, watch this, and he goes, hey girl. And the girl, she kind of looked back at us like, what the hell? And then I look over at Nick, and he's just cheesing. He's going, like that. Like, I don't know why that's so funny to me, but all these years later, like I still love it. It's been 20 years, and I still think that that's the funniest shit. Uh,
Well, he was trying the Joey Tribbiani, how you doing? And
yeah. Every time
we
I
we'd
talk to Nick
watch
Manilow,
we
I do
watched
that.
Corporal would, hey sweetie, and they would just be putty in his hands. And we're like, how in the hell is Corporal doing it? And then like one day he's staying at my house on one of the, I can't remember what we were doing, but him and a bunch are staying at my house, and when I was living in Morris and my grandma was living in the house, and he hey sweetie my grandma, and I was like, Corp, get the fuck out of my house. Just get no, you're not hey sweetie and my grandmother. Get out.
Yeah, get out of here.
Get the hell out of here.
Get out of here.
But that was his version of it, and I could it is funny to sit and think back, and he was, I mean, hell, he was probably just out of just out of high school, just a kid back then,
Yeah.
doing it. So uh the last match that you had with IWA Mid South was a six-way title match. Toby, Bull, Ian, Insane Lane, Mitch Page. Um, any memories of that match? And did you know that was going to be your last match with IWA? Like, how did that come about?
So I remember the match happening, but I don't remember anything about it. Like I'd have to watch the match to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it must have been like pretty unremarkable to me. But no, I was actually booked for more IWA matches, more shows. Um, I was supposed to work with Corp again. Um, and I was sitting in my mom's house and she was doing my laundry, which I probably shouldn't be admitting because I was a grown man and she was doing my laundry. But I was packing my gear bag for the night and I was about to leave and go to the show. And I was really struggling with depression. So I have bipolar disorder and I didn't know that I had it then. So like I was not medicated, I was not being treated for it, like I was not having any of that stuff. Like um, so that's why one of the reasons my behavior was so erratic back then. Um, but I was sitting there and I'd wrestled Corp a few times and I had to get 14 staples in my head. I got knocked out. I got I kept getting all these head injuries every time I worked with Corp. In IWA or Philadelphia or like I'd work with them in like these little like podunk shows and it was easy, but like on these bigger stages, like he was just another beast, and I think that he wasn't very safe. That's my opinion. I could be wrong. Maybe somebody else will tell you something otherwise, but that's what I felt. I felt like he wasn't safe with me at least.
Okay.
Um, so I'm sitting there and I'm in rough shape mentally. Like I'm really suffering with like this whole thing. And I just told my mom, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to go out here and get hurt. Like, my hands were black and blue from punching people. Like, my eye was busted. My forehead was all cut up. My, like, the inside of my mouth was tore up from getting my teeth knocked into my mouth and all this stuff. And, like, I just told her, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, I don't think. And she goes, well, then just quit. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I could just quit. And so I didn't go. I just didn't go to the show. And it probably wasn't the best way to handle it. I probably should have hit Ian up and just told Ian, hey man, like I'm really having troubles. Like I'm in really bad shape and I need to like take some time to like get my head on straight. But I didn't. I just didn't show up. Which is weird because then after that he threatened to kill me with an Uzi. Um, which is Ian was like, he's like, I'll kill you if I ever see you. I'm gonna kill you with an Uzi. Like I'm gonna shoot you. I got an Uzi and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, Ian. But yeah, I did a few more matches. I did like a retirement angle in Evansville. Um, because I liked working in Evansville, and that was it. Then I didn't wrestle again for like a decade until the JC Bailey Memorial Show, whenever that was. I didn't do another match until then. Um, yeah, that was kind of the end.
So it was just you'd had enough, and then the mental health issues, and that's something that even to this day people don't take seriously enough. And especially back then, it was almost seen more as a weakness than anything else. And like you'd be like, oh, I'm too macho to even seek help. So
Right.
um it's not a healthy environment to be around when you've got those issues. And like at least you were able to get out and save yourself and not become a statistic like far too many of our fallen comrades over the years. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that you got out when you did. You know, I stuck around way longer than I wanted to out of loyalty, and you know, I definitely had a lot of dark days and times. I never seeked help. I'm not saying I have anything like what you deal with, but yeah, it was definitely not an environment where you felt okay to speak out on stuff like that. Definitely not an environment that you'd feel okay seeking help. Um, are you getting treatment now?
So I don't go to active like regular counseling. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's I don't go to active counseling right now because I've been in treatment for a long time, but I do have medication appointments.
Okay.
I take like a fair amount of medicine on a regular basis, and I do a lot of self control to like maintain. Um, but it's a battle, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
if I don't take my medicine, like I slide right back into some of the same behaviors. I start doing some of the same stuff that just sets myself up for failure. But luckily, I'm really good at being honest with myself about the situation that I'm in. So I'm good at stopping any backslides before they become a backslide. You know what I mean?
that's good. That's good that you're to that point. Glad to hear that. I have a cousin that she has bipolar, and I haven't spoken to her and since my grandmother's funeral. I think it was the last, and that's eight 8 years, 9 years now, um, since that. So um, you know, it's definitely something that's a hard battle. So I'm glad you got the help that you needed, and you know, anybody that's listening to this, if you're in a similar situation, don't let anybody tell you that it's wrong to seek help or ask for help. Go get it, and you know, lean on friends and family and doctors and everything else to get the help that you need. Because
Well, for sure. And you can always hit me up on social media. I suck at responding. Sometimes it takes me forever. But you can always hit me up and I can try and help you get some resources too. Like I can help you look for stuff. Like I got no problem doing that for people. So um yeah, feel free, man. If you're out there and you're struggling and you need somebody to talk to, hit me up. And once I do respond, I will try to respond on a regular basis. But once I do respond, I'll see your messages and I'll respond faster. But um yeah, I'd be happy to help however I can if you're in that situation.
so we're gonna start wrapping up. First, we're gonna talk about WrestleArts, which is your current project. Looked like not all of the results were easy to find for me on the different websites, but it looked like was the first show 2017. It looked like. Does that sound about right for?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, Wrestle Arts is a charitable organization. You've got, you know, legit paperwork on that. It's not a wrestling, you know, work to sit there and tell the people that, hey, this is a charitable organization and the charity is, you know,
Me.
me,
All right.
kind of, you know, this isn't an Ian Rotten situation. So it's a legitimate charitable organization that you know you have and you run, and I was blown away by the professionalism of it with my first show there, and told the story like paid before the show even happened, and I'm sitting there going, wow, I could just turn around and run right out this door and just keep right on going and be like, woohoo, get a paid for a wrestling show, and then I just leave. But no, it was an amazing experience, and
Thanks, man. I appreciate you saying that.
one of the reasons why I jumped at the opportunity when it was offered to me when I heard about the work that you guys do. So why don't you just, those that may not be familiar that are listening with this, what is the mission of Wrestle Arts with this charitable work that's being done? What are the goals, the mission, and what led you to want to do this?
So the mission of WrestleArts, like what we're doing is we're trying to start some programs now where we can work with youth in the community to teach them things like um, videography, media production, event lighting, event sound, whatever it is their interest may be as it revolves around wrestling, and we can give them that for free, and we can give them those resources for free. Um, we also do things like sometimes we do fundraisers for different things. We've put well over $15,000 back into the community. Um, I want to say it's even getting closer to 20,000 at this point, but I know for sure we're over 15 um, off the top of my head. Um, but we've done things from helping put homeless people into housing. We've helped uh, get pets like dog houses. You know what I mean? We've done all kinds of stuff from one end of the spectrum to the other. Helped provide hospice care for people who can't afford it, and all kinds of things like that. So it's a really rewarding thing to do. It started off when we did the first WrestleArts show. It was a fundraiser at my kid's school to give money back to the special needs program that my kid was a part of. He's very high functioning, but he does have a little bit of a little touch of the autism. Um, so it was kind of just something to give back. Um, and doing that show at that school totally changed how I felt about wrestling because I had gotten to the point, like we talked about this. Like I was super bitter when I left. I didn't want anything to do with wrestling. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to mess with it. Um,
I know that feeling very well.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'd done a few things here and there, and I wasn't feeling quite as bitter about it, but I had no interest in running shows. I had no interest in wrestling on shows. I just was trying to help out the school, and the vibe was so good because everybody was there for the right reason. Like everybody was there doing me a favor as a friend. Everybody got paid, but nobody had a guarantee. It was all just basically we gave everybody some gas money for coming, which I felt like was a huge sign of respect for me because everybody knew up front that that's what it was going to be. Um, and it just the vibe was right, man, and it felt good being a part of it. It felt the doing something for somebody else felt good. So I got the itch to book shows after that. So when we finally got everything in order to start running Wrestle Arts, I wanted it to have the same feeling. Now everybody gets paid a fair wage. Now we don't just give people gas money, um, unless that's a fair wage for them, I guess, and they got a gas guzzler, maybe I don't know, but
Well,
we
with gas prices what they are now,
yeah, that's fair.
every car is a gas guzzler at the moment.
Yeah, you're right.
Unfortunately.
But like when you were dealing with this, you asked for what we asked for, and we told you
Yeah.
how close we could get to that, and that's your
Right.
money was in an envelope when you got there, and that's how we treat
Right.
everybody. We pay everybody up front because, like you said, somebody could certainly run out of the building and disappear on us. It's never happened before, thank God.
Yeah,
But
and hopefully I didn't just put that out into the universe that somebody do it,
yeah,
but it'd be their last time working there, and then
for sure.
I hope that it would then make it the last time they worked anywhere. So not a smart choice to do, but yeah,
Right. But it is the people are there to do something positive. They're there to be a part of something positive, and it's really cool, man. It's great. I think the shows are fun. There, I have a great time. As far as I know, everybody else has a great time there. The few instances we've had somebody that didn't want to be there, we don't bring them back because we don't want people who don't want to be there. It's not just a payday. It's something we're doing for the community, you know.
right.
Um, and I genuinely love wrestle arts. It makes me love wrestling. So I hope that we can do that for other people.
That's great. That is great. And you had the women's football team, the
The Valor,
Valor
yeah,
was there at the show I was on, and they were impressive, and it looked like they were having a great time sitting in the crowd watching, and it looks
yeah,
like they're off to a good start this season, aren't they? Or at least they won the first game or something. I think I
yeah. They
saw you
won their first
guys.
home game. Yeah,
Yeah, so that was fun, and but yeah, I like the aspect of the whole the giving back. Um, just the upbringing that I had with the struggles that my family had with my dad being in a wheelchair a decade before the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed. So he was pretty much just trapped in our house because, sidewalks didn't have the ramps. It was just curbs. So he couldn't,
Right.
you know, he could go a block and then he's stuck. Stores didn't have the automatic doors, so he couldn't get into a store. And then if he could
That's
find a
rough.
way to get into the store, the aisles are so narrow and not spacing, you couldn't get his wheelchair through. And so, I mean, he was like a prisoner in his own home, really. And for the first, well, it would have been the first 8 years that he was in the wheelchair, the house we were in was too small and he couldn't move around in the house. So like I'd have to help my mom. We would have to pretty much carry him from the bedroom to the bathroom if he wanted to take a shower, if he had to get on the toilet to go to the bathroom, because the wheelchair couldn't get through the doorways that led through. And it took us 8 years before we could finally get into a house that, was made for somebody that had a wheelchair.
Yeah.
And it always made me think about all of our money was going towards his health care. And so, I couldn't ask for Air Jordans. I couldn't ask for, the fancy in pair of pants. I had to get what my mom could get with her 10% discount at Walmart.
Right.
I'd have to get the Jordache shoes and the Rustler jeans, and I'd have to put up with, being picked on because I didn't have the cool things. And I had to go home and take care of my dad instead of, doing kid things. And it just made me sympathetic to the situation that people are in with stuff like that. And as I've gotten older, the ability to like give back means a whole hell of a lot more. So, you know, I'm doing WrestleArts, I'm doing Pawcade. I love these shows where you got the aspect of you can give back and help, you know,
Right.
help the community. So that's great that WrestleArts is doing that. Um, Before we hype the show that's about to happen, one last question. Another one from Prophet of Ash, who wanted me to ask about Poonlock, who I knew nothing about. And then when I mentioned him to you, you said there was a White Castle story. So if you want to talk about Poonlock and the White Castle story, we can then move into the WrestleArts show that's about to happen and wrap this thing up.
Yeah, so Pooney was a character, man. He was a mess. He was one of the guys that kind of worked with American Kickboxer some. But this guy, we used to do these. Me and Jeremy Ping and some other guys used to do these videos. Diehard Dustin Lee was in them sometimes, called Hank Hoodlum, on the internet, and we also did them for WAV 53, which is like a local MTV here in Indianapolis. So anyway, we're out with Pooney one day and we're filming, and he goes, let's go up to this White Castle. This guy named NW Ozzy, who is part of their like backyard wrestling thing. Like he worked there, and I'll get us some free drinks. I hate White Castle, so I don't want the sliders. Like White Castle makes me sick every time. Um, but we go up there. I kid you not. He throws this guy into and they lock up, and they immediately go into like a full blown worked wrestling match in the front of this White Castle, while this guy's on the clock. Like they're hip tossing each other, arm dragging each other, like a full wrestling
Wow.
match. Like people are standing around, like what the hell is going on here? And yeah, it was wild. And I had it on tape forever. I might still have it on a little mini DV tape somewhere, but that was wild. Old Pooney in the White Castle wrestling NW Ozzy. Um, and then one time he burned me pretty good. So when I was in high school, I sacked Rex Grossman. You know who Rex Grossman is?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, I
Bears
sacked.
quarter Bears Rex is our quarterback, and
Yep.
I went to that Super Bowl and sat in the rain and watched us lose with Rex as our quarterback.
I
Uh,
murdered him, man. I sacked him so hard. I was a sophomore and he was a senior, and I got his ass. But we Punlo called my mom one time, and she goes, "Because this is Rex Grossman. Tell John to quit telling people he sacked me." And then hung up the phone. Like that was pretty. That was a pretty good burn. But no, I did. I sacked the crap out of Rex Grossman. That was like the highlight of my whole football playing career. Um, but yeah, he Pooney was insane. He I don't know what he's up to now, but I know like he was in jail forever for drugs and faking prescriptions or something. But hopefully he's doing good and then he's cleaned up and doing the right thing now. I hope.
Hopefully, he does sound like a character. I can just imagine people at White Castle going like, "What the hell is going on?" And do we
Right.
need to call the cops? What's happening? And I'm
Right.
with you. White Castle burgers suck,
This is the
and
worst.
I say that as from the time that I was in college on my own until probably 20 years ago when I started suffering from gout. I lived on cheeseburgers. It was like every meal was cheeseburgers or pizza. And so I love my cheeseburgers. And I would not, even when I was doing that, I would not eat White Castle. White Castle sucks. Yeah, I'd get sick every damn time I ate it.
I
So
feel like
yeah,
we just can't like.
down with white. And I did not get to have a smashed Midwest burger on the last trip, but it's definitely on the docket for me to try one,
Oh, you'll love it.
especially after I am hoisting up their Triple Crown title at the end of the match with Connor Hopkins come Saturday night. The night after this is going to drop on Friday. So the next day, if you're listening to this when it drops, you still have time to get your tickets for the next WrestleArts show the night before the Indy 500, which should make things kind of interesting around town, I'm sure,
Yeah.
uh, with the travel. But what do you want to say about that show?
Well, it's going to be a great show. I mean, we got not only do we have David Ali versus Connor Hopkins, and they actually had a match at a school show a frat show that we did that was great.
You know,
It was in the rain.
one of my buddies that's coming to the show was just telling me about that. He was like, "Oh, I just found footage that got released of a show that was at a frat house." So
Yeah, and it was a good match. They had great chemistry together. I think they're going to kill it. I think that David Ali is a great face of WrestleArts. I think David Ali is one of the most underrated wrestlers in the Midwest, hands down. Um, and I think that Connor Hopkins is too. And I think that it's only a matter of time before people see these guys for like the quality that they are. Um, so I think that they're going to have a killer match, and because I mean we got optimal conditions, they're not in the rain, they don't have 400 frat guys throwing beers at them. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a banger. And we got Calvin Tankman versus Braden Lee. That match is going to be nuts. Um, we got me versus Toby. So if you're into like the brawling and whatnot, you're going to get a good brawl there. Um,
and now I'm going to say this. The other day there was a tweet from the WrestleArts Twitter account that you know said we promise this is family friendly entertainment. I got to tell you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how you and Toby are going to fit into that category, but I'm very interested to see it. Um, so it's not going to it's not going to have razor blades and a board. I'm guessing,
no, for
and
sure.
it's hopefully not going to have chunks taken out of either of your bodies that cause people to call cops. But it's going to be a fight. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be good. It's going to push the limits of PG-13, I'm sure, but PG-13 is what I would
You're bringing
expect.
in Wolfie and Jamie.
I wish. No, actually, I should probably steer clear of Jamie Dundee. Uh,
Probably. Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah, no, we try not to do anything that you can't see on regular television. Um, and
Well,
we try to.
AEW has definitely pushed the limits on some of their stuff. That
That's true. That's true. We do have sponsors and we do have like, community relationships we got to think about. So, we're not gonna be busting out light bulbs and stuff like that. But if you want to see a good fist fight, a good brawl, if you want to see some wild action, we'll definitely deliver on that for you. Um, but it's going to be a good show. We got a lot of talent that is really underrated. And I think that if you go over we got some events on IWTV, but most of our stuff is on YouTube. If you give us a chance, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you find we're doing over at WrestleArts.
and you have anything else to hype, WrestleArts related, or just John Barker? I see there's a lot of like Skull and Mortar T-shirt. I think I just saw listed the other day.
Yeah. Skull and Mortar is my real business. We do like barbecue stuff, so check me out on Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. Subscribing and following me is free, so if you want to support me that way, that's a great way to do it. We got T-shirts. We're gonna have sauces and rubs again here soon. Just things are gonna go back to how they were as far as that goes with merchandise. But if you can't afford merchandise, don't buy merchandise. Just hit a subscribe and hit a like and watch a video, click some pictures. All that stuff is free, and it helps me out. So yeah, Skull and Mortar everywhere.
Okay, and that's how they can find. It's like Instagram.
Instagram, Twitter, or X, Instagram, X, Facebook,
I refuse to call it.
YouTube.
I refuse to call it X.
Yeah, it feels weird, right?
Yeah. It's Twitter.
Yeah,
Just say it's Twitter.
it's just Twitter. Yeah. But yeah, follow me on any of that stuff, man. And if you want to chat, I try to respond to messages. So shoot me a message. We'll talk. Yeah, whatever, man. I always got time for people.
All righty. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, John. Pleasure to have you on here, talk old memories, and see some of the similarities that we have and feelings, and taking long times off from the business and then coming back. So you can understand what I'm going through with that. And, like I say, I'm looking forward to this show and other shows in the future. There's June the 20th is it Greenwood?
Yeah, it's in Greenwood.
Greenwood. And you've also got, there's a show that you're doing for um, Gay Pride Festival there in Indianapolis. There's a,
Yep, yeah, at the Irvington Pride on the 27th. So June's going to be a busy month for us for sure.
okay. All righty. So that's how, and get those tickets, WrestleArts.com. Say, Connor Hopkins is going to be the 10th heavyweight champion in Fannin family history. You can take that one to the bank. Go look at my promo that just got released. Believe that Connor's probably going to release something before the match as well. But this is going to wrap up another edition of Fannin's Flashbacks. You can check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/sportsfannin for IWA clips, matches, the audio now of these podcasts, because if you want the video, you're going to have to go to IWTV, and there'll be added footage of some of the matches that are talked about on these episodes. If you're not already subscribed to IWTV, please consider to do so. It's ran by Smart Mark Video. It's got these podcasts on there. Live stream a lot of wrestling events. It's got the IWA Mid South catalogs on there, so you can see some old IWA Mid South footage, see complete matches of what happened in the craziest hardcore organization in the Midwest back in the early 2000s. I don't have to tell you about it. If you're listening to my podcast, you're very familiar with what's going on, but you can see that there's no holds barred video libraries on there. A lot of great Dreamwave wrestlings on there. A lot of the great current wrestling promotions have their stuff up on there. So tell IWTV and Smart Mark Video thank you for letting my podcast air on their network. Also tell Prophet of Ash on Twitter thank you for all the time he's putting in on editing these. Make sure that you come out to WrestleArts. I've also got a show right here in Chicago coming up on June 12th for Bloodstone, where the Rejects are joining the Fannin family on June 12th for Bloodstone. John Wayne Murdoch becomes the first of the Rejects to join. And then at Pawcade, June the 27th in Jeffersonville, Indiana at the arena. It is both of the Rejects, Reed Bentley and John Wayne Murdoch, managed by me as we take on Twitter's Most Wanted, the team of Sean Ross Sapp and Steve ! Known on Twitter as Not Dr. Death. So come out and watch us destroy those two at Pawcade to help Miss Pitts and Friends rescue there in the Louisville area. So you can get your tickets for that one at midwestterritory.com. There's only about 25 tickets left for Bloodstone. You can get those at nostalgiagland.com. And once again, any WrestleArts shows, get your tickets at wrestleartstix.com. And we will see you there. Mickey Knuckles, Connor Hopkins, the Rejects, that's the current official members of the Fannin family. We are ready for booking, so reach out and let's do business. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of Fannin's Flashbacks. So let it be written, so let it be done. Good day. So let it be written, so let it be done. Good day.